Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Carolyn Lovewell, and I'm with my friend Neil.
Hello.
And we are in a U-Haul driving down from Pittsburgh to our Sleepover Mystery School location, which must remain secret.
Top secret.
But Neil does the sets for Sleepover Mystery School, and Layla has just had a baby.
Congrats.
Yay, Layla. I was sort of afraid to say that. I'm like, oh my god, what if she hears that I told people that she had a baby? But I don't think she can keep this under wraps completely. I think, anyways, Layla has had a baby, and I'm sorry you heard it from me instead of from her. I'm sure she can tell us much more about the whole baby experience, perhaps, when she is back on. But anyways, that's why she's not here. She's doing her thing with her new baby Christopher. Yay, welcome to the world, baby Christopher. So anyhow, I'm hanging out with Neil, and Neil had ideas for the podcast. He wanted to talk about relationships and divine timing.
Yeah, relationships, road trips, and divine timing.
We are on a road trip of sorts, because this is going to take us 3 hours, so
yeah.
We're in for the long haul, everybody.
Right, so we got to enjoy this.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Well, so Neil was talking to me about his experience on the dating scene. So to give you all some context, everybody, Neil is a very handsome young man. He's employed. He's, we were just talking about whether or not he's a millennial. He's a millennial like me. 1984.
Yeah,
what up?
That's why when you call me young, I'm like, well, then we're both young. We're both very young.
We're both young. I just, it's because you're a bachelor, Neil. You're not married, so I feel older than you because I'm like a matron.
Yeah.
And you are still like a swinging single, I think.
Swinging single.
Anyhow, because Neil is a swinging single, he's regaling me with tales of what it's like being out on the dating scene, the Pittsburgh dating scene, nonetheless, which is a particularly terrifying prospect that I always greatly resented throughout my life. I hear that in some other cities maybe you have fun dating. I never really had fun dating in Pittsburgh. It was just a hair-raising experience. I remember in 2016 looking through the Tinder in Pittsburgh, and it was just thousands of guys wearing Penguins hockey shirts, holding up fishes, trying to attract women with their fish-getting prowess. Anyways.
I had a similar experience. I signed up for a dating app. I think it was the one that, basically the other person will message you. Because it was I don't want to be too much of a creep. Because I know that was pretty common. I think it's Bumble. And I signed up for it, and then I saw so many other people in Pens jerseys with a beer in their hand, and I was like, why would you post the photo with you with a beer in your hand looking pretty drunk, as if that's hey, this is the best I've got.
That's what people in Pittsburgh think is cool. I mean, obviously obviously there's a subset of people in Pittsburgh who are super freaking awesome, and
they're just not on the dating
they're
app.
not a lot.
That or the algorithm is trying to coin me to something that I'm not.
Yeah, it's a whole other universe. I don't even pretend to understand it. It's a different vibration, a whole different way of being.
Yeah, and I was talking to someone about it last night, because in general, they're well, Pittsburgh's a Rust Belt city, so they just sort of default to this Rust Belt, blue collar. But there is still, there's a lot of anger in Pittsburgh, in the people of Pittsburgh. And I feel whenever you go to other cities, you don't always see that. You might see some hostility if you go to New York and you're not from New York, but generally New Yorkers don't really have that. They don't have time for that. They're just on the go. But
are you talking about hostility in people in Pittsburgh on dating sites?
I mean, just in general, people seem to be mad. And so on the dating site, I don't know, but I see a lot of times, you'll go and you'll interact with someone that you haven't met before, and they'll just be shit talking someone else, and then a few weeks later you'll be I met the person you're shit talking about. It's a little too small of a scene for you to do that.
It is a small scene. No, I know what you mean. Well, so what did you want? So you were giving me some reflections about your relationships over the past year. Do we want to start with that for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I really wanted to maybe pick your brain about has to do with more the sense of how relationships come and go for various reasons, and how there seems to be some divine timing in them, and whenever they go, seeing what that might be or understanding what it is, because at the end of the day I feel all I have is love to give, And when relationships end, it doesn't matter if they ended badly with another person, I still feel love for that person. Right? It's like, that's great.
That is so great. You're such an evolved being, Neil.
Well, it's... If I'm going to regret anything later in life, it's probably going to be being mad at someone for something that they just did because they needed to do it for themselves, right?
Yeah.
And whether it's self-preservation or it's personal insecurities, or like you just need your own therapist and you can't be in a relationship with the person and expect them to be your therapist. Like whatever the case may be, it's like we're all working on different things. So to like come at it from an angle of love, it's like, oh, I only see that I learned good things. Like that idea that if you're born alone and you die alone, just to be able to walk beside anybody for any amount of time is a gift.
Yeah, well, so I'm totally down to talk about this. I think I'm kind of curious, Neil, because I've heard you express before, like, so my general orientation to relationships has been fairly teleological. Like I told you, I was like, I want a man, I want to get married, I want to be in Pittsburgh, I want to have babies. Anyways, I know that you're not like that. You're not like necessarily looking for a certain particular kind of thing. You're sort of like more open to what shows up, right?
Yeah, and it's also how I've lived my life that's brought me to all the gigs that I do, you know, this fantastic, like how would I end up here if I was like, give me the 9-to-5 stable job? Like I wouldn't be doing any mystery school stuff.
It's true. Me and Layla met Neil at a, what kind of ceremony? Oh, Wachuma ceremony. Oh, it was such a beautiful summer day. I was like picking blackberries, and I overheard Neil telling Layla about how he just really wanted his life to be dedicated to helping a revival of the Eleusinian mysteries.
Definitely a moment there, and Layla was like, what? We want to revive the Eleusinian mysteries. It's like, oh, okay. Guess we're going to be friends.
Magical, pure magic. Well, indeed. And so that's how you live your life, is being sort of moving with the Tao.
Yeah, it feels like it flows better. Like in that path of least resistance, right? That's the idea behind it. I'm not stressing about things, and my life seems to be continuous, like ever evolving and improving. Like you always wonder, almost even from like a Stoic point of view, of like maybe like I just got to be okay with what I got because things can always get worse. But it's like, so far I feel very fortunate about everything that's sort of unfolded around me.
Yeah.
And relationships are like that, just like friendships are like that. Like I don't plan to have a friendship with somebody.
Well, I think what I heard you saying earlier, though, is that you feel like you're encountering people who are like not even just sort of flowing like you are, but they're very ambivalent about whether or not they even want to have a relationship or be in a relationship.
Yeah, and I'm probably not giving them any, like, oh, you need to be in a, like, foundational things, because I'm going with the flow on that front. There's some aspects where I think we try and date the people who embody something that we want to embody within ourselves. So there might be that level of, like, my go with the flowness of just seeing where things go that other people are like, yeah, I'll try that. That seems interesting. And then there's a level of, you know, whenever I see somebody else and I, like, decide what I like about them, like I eventually, whether I'm in that relationship or not, I try and incorporate what I liked about that person into me. You know, so when I was in Switzerland recently, I was thinking about somebody that I'd recently gotten out of a acute situationship with, and I was like, oh, I'm thinking about this person. I was like, well, what would they do here right now? And I was like, oh, this person would be dancing in this like river. Like they'd be going off the beaten trail and just doing all these amazing things, and I would be there with them. And I was like, why am I holding back? Here I am in Switzerland, I'm by myself, let's go. So next thing I know, I'm like in the water and I'm dancing, I'm thinking, and it brought out a liveliness that it's sort of that love that you want to share with another person. If you shine that back on yourself, it's like, it's very rewarding, you know?
It is very rewarding. Well, I think sort of what that reminds me of is just the way in which, like, all interactions with other human beings are, could potentially be vehicles by which we get closer to the divine lover who's always with us. And I liked what you just said about incorporating the qualities that you liked in another person into yourself. It reminds me of time when I had a super obsessive crush on a magician dude that I knew, and like at the time I was in grad school and I was kind of like really straight-laced and just like academic, and I wasn't really doing anything magically myself, but oh my lord, was I obsessed with this man who just, was like letting his freak flag fly all the time and giving tarot readings and doing weird magical rituals. I was just like, and finally I realized, Carolyn, you don't want to fuck him. You want to be him. Just be him. Yeah. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And that is what I have done. And it has been very rewarding.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like sometimes people get into that relationship and they don't know why. And then they expect that other person to do that thing for them. And then they form this codependency where it's like that other person validates their love for themselves. And the second that there's a change in that, like the other person withdraws or the other person has to go, introspective or just, then all of a sudden it's like, they don't love me anymore. And it's like, wait, you really do have to come into, I believe, into relationships from sort of some healthy footing, right? Like if you're in a place where you're like really all over the place, like maybe now's not the best time. But you also can't come into it and say to yourself, like, this person validates my existence, or this person is doing the thing that I want to do. Because, like, at some point in time, maybe you can collaborate or maybe it'll work out. But, like, as, I think, it's like you're with family and then sometimes you need a break from family. Mm-hmm. So if it's like, oh, we do everything together, it's like, well, that works for some people, but I don't know if it works for everybody. Mm-hmm. 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 Who was it? Like an old teacher of mine said that the best relationships are like two trees growing next to each other. Like they can share the same soil, they can feel the same breeze, but like healthy trees won't like intertwine their roots. They won't wrap their trunks around each other. Like one of them is going to strangle the other one at that point.
Well, that reminds me of that Rilke quote about how, one of the highest forms of love is each person guarding the solitude of the other. Something like that. But yeah, well, but you wanted to talk about divine timing, Neil, and I feel like I don't know that you have questions for me so much, because I think you understand it completely. I think you're receiving it and enjoying it. Or is there a problem in there?
I think it's literally just in awe of it.
You're in awe.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like this idea that, for a new door to open, like, another door probably has to close. Mm-hmm. And I was sort of sitting at this, I was coming out of my trip from Switzerland. I got basically like, the first week I taught a workshop, so like I was very focused. And the second week I was just by myself. Like no earbuds, no nothing, just staring out the window, looking at trains, like hiking for endless hours and like gorgeous, parts of nature that seem so surreal. And having like a mental peace and a mental break from it, just so that I could reflect on those relationships. And whenever I came back, the biggest thing I was doing is I was focusing on projects that were primarily comedy driven. And to be in the right mindset to work on something that's comedic, you kind of have to be happy. It's not easy to do if you're miserable, or if you're in a relationship where the other person is really upset or miserable. Like you try. You could try your best, but good luck, because you'll just, if you're a sociopath, you could just, move on. Maybe there's some great sociopathic comedians.
It reminds me of, I saw like Jerry Seinfeld's most recent stand-up, and it was basically like him complaining about how his wife doesn't like his tone of voice. And the whole time I was like, this isn't funny, Jerry Seinfeld. I just feel sorry for you, and I feel sorry for your wife that you're an asshole. Like, anyways.
And I wonder if she's like, I'm going to watch this comedy special and be like, okay. All right, you threw me under the bus the whole time.
Now I'm divorcing you. Give me half your money, Jerry.
Yeah, take that money. Oh my God.
But anyways, yeah, I feel like I definitely agree with you, Neil, that comedy is hard to achieve when one is miserable, unless one's comedy centers around being a miserable fuck, which I guess some people's comedy does.
And they do a great job at it.
Like Louis C.K. might be the world master of that.
Yeah, and also with Larry David, he's always oh me, I did something wrong and I'm not going to apologize for it. So yeah, it's I don't know, it's been beautiful, and it has put me in a state of awe, because the relationships that I had came to an end just so that I could focus on this. And I felt this, it's been growing over a period of time. It's not like I hear a voice in my head that says anything in words, but there's a feeling of a presence being around me whenever I'm like, I know I'm doing the right thing. And I've had it come up in powerful ways, like at random moments in my life. You know, sometimes like the lowest of the lows that I've had, and sometimes the highest of the highs. But there's this feeling of like, yeah, I am not alone. Like, and this is great. So sometimes I'll just take walks with this like energy, or like sit next to a tree and just say thank you. Like, it's really hard not to say thank you and just feel like happy, even though there's ups and downs. Like, you know, this spectrum of existence is like a pendulum. You know, you're not 100% happy all the time. You're not, hopefully not 100% sad all the time. But that like pendulum as it goes, it's like each emotion is like a gift too.
Well, I feel like you just really beautifully described what I think of as, you know, knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. Like that divine presence that we can feel with us when we know that we're following our path and our destiny and what's true for us. And the gratitude and the open-heartedness and the happiness, like the underlying contentment, even with ups and downs, that can come from that. Which, interestingly, is what the mystery school is all about.
Right,
helping people connect with it.
It's interesting too, seeing people come into the mystery school. Like, I won't give too many details about it, but you'll see people stuck in a mindset where you could tell that they're telling them sort of this like, I don't want to say this like lie, but they're telling them like a facade of like their self, or like why they can't be happy or something like that. And then you're talking to them and you're like, you know, you're like an amazing person. Like, you've got so many cool things going on about you, but you don't even see it in yourself. And it's like, whether that was like covered up by like traumatic, you know, childhood relationships, bad relationship, you know, in general with partners, whatever it may be, or friendships. It's interesting to see that people hold that over them, and you just hope that like it shakes away, or maybe something changes about it. But I told you earlier before, it's like anybody who's cool, I feel like I could be in a relationship with anybody who's cool, because it's like, oh, if I can love you, I can go down a deep rabbit hole. But I have a hard time getting out of relationships, which is why I'm hesitant to get in them. You know, because you can get wrapped into something and then you're like, okay, this isn't serving either of us anymore. How's the best way to get out of it? And it never feels like there's a best way or a best time. Like, you're like, okay, today's the day, and then it's like, their grandma died.
Right, like that Simon and Garfunkel song, 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Like, slip out the back, Jack.
maybe I gotta ask ChatGPT for 1,000 of them and see what it comes up with.
Yeah.
Surveying the internet.
Oh, I really empathize with that feeling. I remember the day that I realized that I was in love with my now husband, David, and I was like, oh, fuck.
Oh, fuck.
Yep. I was just like, well, I'm in it now. Here we go, boy. It happened. It snuck up on me.
But, and we talked about this too. You chose because you wanted to have a relationship. And we're in this strange period, you know, outside of, maybe there's just a bunch of people posting photos that aren't even them, or heavily modified on like Tinder, to try and like get somebody, which isn't like a real thing at all. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who keep seeing that the grass is greener on the other side because they're looking at the internet or dating apps. And like, they'll be on a date with somebody. Like, this is why I don't use dating apps. Like, I'm navigate through friendships, but I hear it from my friends all the time. They'll be like, I was on a dating app and I was hanging out with him, and then, but I'm also getting hit up by this other guy that's really hot. And I'm like, all right, well, what about the person you're on the date with? It's like, well, I kind of stopped paying attention to him. It's like, okay, well, if you don't pay attention, and a lot of people are, I feel like, more neurodivergent or more awkward nowadays, so it's harder to get the shell cracked so that you can see who the person is. You feel like
people are more nerdy and virginal today?
Yeah. Well, in a strange, slutty way.
Really?
Everyone's like, I'm such a nerd, and I can't do anything, but I will totally have sex. Like, it's just, we know what the risks are at this point.
Yeah.
And so there's this phase where it's like, well, you're looking for a perfect relationship, right? You're looking for maybe this.
So this is your vibe.
Dream.
You feel like people out there are looking for a perfect relationship.
Yeah, and it seems to me, maybe this is a small survey of the Pittsburgh scene or, certain generations, but people in general seem like they're looking for this perfect relationship, like this thing to complete them. And in doing so, it's really hard because, like, I don't know, maybe, I'm not going to say never, but maybe you find somebody who is this, like, perfect opposite to you that, like, completes you in some way, shape, or form. Or, like, maybe you're just finding someone else that is doing a beautiful job, like, keeping you company, and you're growing together. And that growth is transformational. Like, if you're working on them yourself and they're working on themselves, it's like, who knows where you can go? Who knows where both of you can end up? But there is this level where I see it in a lot of my friends primarily. They're looking for this level of perfection in a relationship. And then in the in-betweens, because they don't want to feel alone or lonely, they kind of just jump into something that feels like they can have some control over it, or that they can have their say. Like, I one friend in particular, she tends to date what I would like to call, like, man boys.
How do you define a man boy?
Someone who's just not mature, who's probably going to lie to them, who won't give them clear answers, who, doesn't have their shit together, and in some ways is, like, still living out, whether it's their high school or their college existence, and, like, playing off of that, and I will say, isn't actively trying to evolve their definition of masculinity, isn't even questioning what that is, or, like, that privilege behind it. And I don't need to dive deep into it, but there's a lot of people who just sort of float and they're doing okay, and because of it, they don't try and do better. And so that's what I define as, like, a man boy. Like, and they're also not going to take responsibility for anything. But this particular person, the reason they date that is because that type of personality is because they know that they have control over the relationship, and at some point when they're ready to say, you need to go, they feel very empowered by it. Because first of all, they already have a kid. They're already a parent. So they'd be like, hey, I already got one kid. I don't need another. Move on. And I've watched them do that. I've watched them do it a number of times, but it's interesting because it's like the relationship, this idea of perfection and something like that, it doesn't seem attainable. To the best of my knowledge.
Well, I get that vibe. Like, I'm inclined to blame the polarity gurus on Instagram. Like, I feel like, obviously I'm a coach on Instagram, and so maybe people could blame me for stuff, but I see, people who are making
people do blame you.
I'm certain that they do. Thank you, everybody. Blame me some more, please. Anyways, but I see folks who make their living out of, getting people to sign up for relationship courses or relationship coaching on the premise, and they're, like, pushing the pain points of, don't you feel like a lack of complete sexual attraction with your long-term partner, and maybe you feel like you just keep attracting these men who aren't super high value men, and don't you want to be more in your feminine and get a guy? Anyways, like, I see a lot of that, and I see, like, stuff that's targeted towards men, basically to make them feel sexually inadequate, so they'll buy courses on how to be sexually better, and stuff, just a sort of, and there's also the whole twin flame new age thing, which has its own fun little culty cults. Haven't you heard about this?
No.
Okay, well, it's based on this complete misreading of Plato combined with, like, some weird stuff from Madame Blavatsky. I don't even know. But, like, it's this idea that your perfect person exists out there somewhere. That once upon a time you were one complete soul, and then your soul, like, divided in two, and now your two halves of a soul are out wandering around, and you find each other, and then you are complete. And I don't know, there's this whole people spin this whole big mythology around it, but it's from a misreading of Plato's Symposium. In Plato's Symposium, there's all these different characters who are talking about the nature of love, and the most serious speech in there is from Socrates' teacher, Diotima, who is talking about the nature of eros and the nature of love, basically as a path of ascension through theurgy to divine love, to the realization of, like, the Tao, the good, like, the beauty that is not beautiful and is not ugly, is what she calls it. And she's talking about the way, the truth, and the life, and about how eros, love, is a path towards that. That's, like, to me, that's the deepest understanding of love. But there was another speech in this symposium which was given by Aristophanes. Aristophanes, who was a famous comedian who wrote plays about, like, politicians in Athens being fucked by donkeys. Like, he was a profane, ridiculous comedian. And when they asked Aristophanes about the nature of love, he told this story about how, well, all humans were originally these sort of stuck together souls, and then they were split apart, and now everybody is looking for their split apart person.
Yeah.
But it was a joke, and everybody in the symposium knew that it was like a silly joke. But there's this whole thousands upon thousands of people in the... I mean, I'm surprised you haven't heard about this, Neil. There's like 2 documentaries about... There's this... one of them is called Twin Flame Universe. There's these websites...
And they make money, right?
Again, and they're cults, and obviously I'm a cult, so I can't hate on cults too hard. But, you know, there's really fun cults, and then there's, like, less fun cults. There's, like, cults that that are more exploitative, I guess. Let's say that.
Yeah, maybe people put the photos of the teacher up behind the teacher.
Things like that. Yeah, giant cults of personality. Anyways, but there's basically, like, the Twin Flames cultic things, as I understand it, get people who are in this, like, lovesick situation, or, like, they want a perfect lover and they can't find it, or they've met somebody and they fell in love and that person doesn't want them back, so they're in this unrequited love situation. And then they prey on that person by saying, like, oh, well, you know, this is a spiritual opportunity for you, and if you do X, Y, and Z and pay me this much money, I can guarantee that you will be together with your twin flame, and then you will achieve total ascension into 5D, and it's very, very silly, and anybody with a little bit of discernment could see that it's goofy town, but there's lots of people who don't have any discernment. And
there's people who, so I always love this idea when someone talks about, like, astrology and they're like, is it real or not? I'm like, well, if people make it real, it is real. Right?
But astrology is totally real now.
I know.
Are you talking about the royal science view?
Well, here's what I'm saying. The people who are in denial of it will just be like, it's obviously not real and they don't know anything about it. But it's like, but it doesn't matter. If people choose to believe it and people choose to make it real, it is real. Like, you can't deny that it's not real. So the idea is, like, if I basically, you know, grab person 1 and person 2 and I say, both of you are going to fall magically in love with each other, it's going to be amazing, and you're both desperately in need and in want of it, when you meet each other, you might just be like, yeah, fuck it, you know, this is love. This is the best that it's going to get, and I'm going to go with it. Because all the people who is like Osho married a bunch of people together, and it's like, you know, they're still together today.
Yeah, but Nicole Dedone did too. That was actually the thing that got me to finally leave One Taste. Was one day I looked at my Facebook feed, and there were like 40 people that I knew suddenly having, like, wedding pictures all in One Taste, because they'd gone to the Nicole Dedone intensive, and she had, which, like, they paid like $40,000 for 2 weeks being coached by Nicole, and she had been like, you and you, you and you, you and you, you and you, get married. Monogamy is the new cool thing. I know for years I told you it was polyamory, but actually I lied. It's monogamy. You got to get married. And I was like looking at my Facebook feed and seeing this, and I was like, oh my god, she's pulling like some Reverend Sun Young Moon shit.
Damn.
Anyways, I was like,
I wonder what her, like, batting average is. Like, how many of those people are still together?
Oh, not a lot. Some of them for sure.
It's like a Vegas wedding.
Yeah. It was just, they were real weddings with, you know, legal weddings, but yeah, they were just, like, really quick, immediately upon leaving this intensive, these people that she told to get married went and got married, which, you know. Oh, what?
Do you want water?
Oh, I'm good on water. Thank you, Neil. In some ways, I see the benefit. I see that, you know, the wise witch woman in a community used to be the person who arranged marriages. So that makes sense from one vantage point. And then, like I said, I'm sure it did work out for some of these people. For other people, it was just a total deep mindfuck, because our culture is not set up for random arranged marriages like that.
Random arranged.
Very good. And anyhow, circling around, how did we get onto the topic? We were just talking about twin flames and people, like, desperate for connection. But yeah, well, anyways, people are very hungry for connection. I mean, that was basically the whole business model of One Taste, and smart business model in many ways it was, because people, we're in this, like, complete breakdown of social mores. Like, I remember when I was dating people, I used to desperately long for the days of, like, I don't know what, Victorian novels, when, like, ladies used to drop handkerchiefs and receive flowers and get asked out to balls and dances and stuff like that. I was like, why can't any of that happen? Or even some 1950s stuff. Why can't somebody come up to me and ask me on a date? Why is there just this complete bizarre, how is anybody supposed to form, there's no social support for forming lasting relationships. And
there's so much information that just attacks anything that anybody does, right? So in the one men's group that I was with Louise, which I could talk about for hours, there would be people in there talking about not knowing how to approach someone else without feeling like they're being hostile. And it's like, whoa, like, are you approaching someone in a hostile fashion? That's kind of the question. But there's fear. There's fear around, like, what can you do, and, like, how can you get away with it? And is it creepy now? Is it creepy to go up to someone and be like, hey, I think you're cool. Do you want to go on a date? And it's like, you could be a creepy person doing that, but no, inherently, maybe that's just how you meet somebody.
Yeah, well, that was exactly, and so that was very frustrating for me for years. And when I traveled through Europe when I was like 27, and like finally there were like good-looking, nice men coming up to me, asking me out. That was like very nice. I was like, wow, this never happened in America, and I thought I was just repulsive because the only guys who would ever express appreciation for me on the street were like catcalling bums. Bless them. There was like never guys who I would actually want to go on a date with coming up to ask me on a date. And anyhow, I wish that was still a thing, but that's not a thing. And so it's weird because it's like, obviously there's so much atomization and alienation in our society, and now like people are looking at these apps as their only chance of connection. But like you said, the apps have this sort of like attention deficit disorder thing built into them, like all of the social media apps do.
They also have an agenda. If you think about it, if you're an app and your goal is to make money by keeping people on your platform and serving ads, you don't actually want people to have long-term relationships. You want them to stay on your app, right? I think about that with like Instagram when I have a lot of friends that are like, oh, I got to post this, I got to do that, and it's like, well, yeah, but the comments that you see are there to trigger you so that you feel reactionary and you have to like jump onto this subject. It's like, but other people see different comments. Other people see different photos. Like, it's there to keep you there. So if you're just playing into it, it's like, at the end of the day, you're the one who's losing. You're losing your time.
I was getting so crazy on Instagram. I had to take another break. I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg's devil algorithm got into my brain at a new level. I was just like, I can't handle this. I regard it as like the poison path, social media, but I was like, this is too much poison. I'm taking too much poison.
At least you get to be wise enough in this point to make that choice, because you look at it, what it does to kids, and like they don't even know that there's a different way to like interact without social media. It's like when I was a kid, like we had tree houses, we didn't even have computers, used to play outside, your parents would let you go for hours. I'm not saying that time needs to reverse, but I didn't have a computer, so I didn't even have a cell phone. Like you survived, you did fine. But now you like take away social media and kids are like, well, I'm depressed. I don't have friends. I can't interact with anybody. And it's sad. It's really unfortunate because they are affected by that algorithm. You're just, able to recognize it and withdraw from it.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I love Sleepover Mystery School is because
no phones.
Well, no phones. We take away people's phones. And also it's actually a way that people get to form deep relationships. We've had many people fall in love in Sleepover Mystery School.
Great hugs. Always get great hugs.
Great hugs. Fall in love with new bestie friends and everything, and sometimes with romantic partners too. And I like it because it is a deep, real experience, and we do so much to like foster authentic connecting and authentic relating. And like you said, you get into relationships from friendships, and that's how I got into my relationship with David, is like we met in a friend group. And I think that is still the ideal way.
It's a nice way. People are kind of vetted. Maybe the person, like my one friend used to say, the nice part about dating someone that isn't like your friend yet is this idea that like there's a safety factor to it, because if things go awry, you're not destroying your friendship, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're like saying, okay, well, we're more like acquaintances now.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a safety to it. But people do come vetted through the similar circles that you're on. If you're looking for someone in a magical community, you might want to join a magical community.
Exactly. Maybe that's the main takeaway. If you're single and you're looking for somebody into magic, you got to join a magical community. Bottom line. That's how Rory and Layla fell in love.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Well, Rory, he joined Electric Yes, which is our online magical community.
I do have to take a moment and pause and say I really love Rory. Like at first I didn't know who Rory was.
Just some interloper interfering with your friendship with Layla.
Well, it wasn't even like Layla's just like, yeah, I'm hanging out with this person and so, and I was like, all right. And then they're like moving to Pittsburgh, so I didn't get to meet this is what I mean. Like in the friend circle of things, you usually get to meet the other person before both those people are like, hey, we're getting married, having a kid, right? We're moving in together. Like usually that happened. This was like Rory was moving. So I didn't get to meet him until he came, and I was like, I really like Rory.
I know, Rory's so awesome. He's such a sweetheart.
Yeah, definitely.
Aww.
So yeah, once again, magical communities. And no one told them you have to get married. You weren't.
Yeah,
I think you were all yelling at each other like, hey, we're trying to do this here.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, they're not a shotgun wedding, everybody. Nobody cultically forced Rory and Layla to get married. I prefer the connections to happen spontaneously.
Well, and I also like, this guy, I have a lot of female friends who will talk about relationships, and I love talking to them about it because sometimes they teach me something about a relationship, maybe a better way that I needed to look at situations that I've been in, and vice versa. And I think one of my favorites is on like the funniest spectrum is similar to how you're talking about like the twin flames or whatever. It's like if you're reading a book about how to find like this ideal person, well, that means you're probably sitting somewhere reading a book and you're not maybe out and about doing something that maybe helps you meet this quote-unquote ideal person.
Yeah,
So,
I think the best, exactly. Like, the thing that I recommend to people, and what we just recommended, and I guess I'm just saying it again, is like, find something that's really super fun to you, that's social, and go out and do that thing that's really super fun, and see who else finds it really super fun.
yeah. And just always try new things. Like, I've been doing acro yoga. It'll always be funny because acro yoga is a partnered thing.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, well, I'm not really going in to like pick up people. Believe it or not, I'm actually going in to stretch my hamstrings, which is a very valid thing. It's probably the best way you can stretch your hamstring. But I would just go and sign up, and it's like I'm always meeting people because it's a partnered practice. So like last week, it was like this guy Thomas was just like bending me and massaging me and everything. I was like, this can't get any better. This is like the best date ever. Very platonic, but I was like, this is the best date ever. You don't go on a first date and have someone just full on break out and massage you in a way that isn't well, we'll leave it there. I'm not, sometimes you do go on dates and you get massages, so it's always possible. But trying new things. Finding that, like, maybe you want to just go to like an art class and just paint if that's not your job, or like, I don't know, the magic side of things is fascinating. Like whenever I tell people what little I can tell them about Sleepover Mystery School, they're always like, that's awesome, tell me more, because I think sometimes, especially whenever it comes down to magic, it feels like if you speak out about it, people are going to judge you, because a lot of people do, because people are always judging, right? That's okay. But you maybe don't want to take that sort of hostility. It's like if you go something magic adjacent or do like a workshop or something like that, it's like, well, you're probably going to feel safer. It feels like a safe environment.
Drum circles.
Yeah.
I think I started going to drum circles. I think that was like what gradually led me to more and more weird magical places. Well, so we've talked about prevailing attitudes about relationships that aren't true, like the grass is always greener and there's some twin flame perfect thing out there. What do you feel is true about relationships, and what attitude ideally should we all have about it?
Well, the only thing I can say for myself, and I don't know if it applies to anyone else, is you don't always know what you want, but you know what you don't want. And I mean that in a way of choosing jobs, choosing whatever, like career path, whatever it is. But you also have to try. And I've caught myself plenty of times saying, no, I don't want that, but actually never trying, never even attempting. Like, that's been part of me growing up as an adult, is like, I'll be like, oh, for 10 years, I'll be like, no, I don't want that. I'll be like, I actually never gave that a chance.
Like what?
Well, to start, I think the first long-term relationship I had was in 2012. And it was like, I was at that point, I had just been randomly dating a bunch of different people. Like, that's what it was. It was like, I don't know what I want, don't want a relationship, just keep dating. And next thing I know, I'm like, but what is a relationship and why am I so resistant to one? And I remember asking my friend Eric at the time, who seemed like he had a really stable relationship. I was like, Eric, how do you know that you want a relationship? Like, what's that all about? How have you been able to maintain? He had one for 8+ years. And he's like, well, you just kind of be honest with yourself and you say, well, I'm willing to try this or be in this as long as it's good. And then if it's not, I'm going to communicate about that. Like, it was a really basic idea. And I was like, oh, it's like, I've never even tried, So this level or I wouldn't say I'm resistant to magic, but I've tried polyamorous relationships, right? I didn't resist them right away, but maybe you figure out it's not the best for you. Or in my experience, it's a lot of times people will say that that's what they want, but it's not exactly what they want. Or they're just not ready for a monogamous relationship, so they want to be poly. And then you get into a relationship with them and all of a sudden they want to be monogamous with you. And you're like, wait, we're changing the terms here. I'm confused. So there's this, we're all complex, right? So giving people the grace period to try and release some of those complexities, or as I like to think, let out their crazy. Because imagine you're hanging out with somebody, maybe they're a little introverted, you're like, I'm not that interested in them, and then they finally let out their crazy, and you're like, you're awesome. It's like, oh, I didn't know that you were a late night graffiti artist who did the, whatever the case is, that's or I didn't know you were a magician, right?
Yeah.
How many people might just keep that a secret for how long?
Yeah, so, I've definitely had experiences like that where I remember I was dating a guy in college and I thought he was really boring and I didn't want to go out on dates with him anymore, and I told my 12-step sponsor about it, and she was like, he sounds nice, I think you should go on another date with him. And I was like, oh, he hardly talks, he just looks at me. She was like, this sounds nice, go on another date with him. And I would just go on dates with this guy because my 12-step sponsor told me I had to, basically, because he didn't sound like the completely crazy drug addicts I'd been dating before. And I ended up falling in love with him, and I was with him, for a couple of years before other circumstances drew us apart. But after about 10 dates of him being really quiet, he started talking, and he was super cool, and we fell in love. And it was a deep experience, and it really taught me something about, like you said, what happens when you keep being willing to, pay attention and show up and not just, trying to move on to the next most exciting thing. It was we found a deep layer of connection that was really nourishing for both of us for a time.
Yeah. And, if we really all knew what we wanted, we'd be doing it, we'd all be happy. Right? But, I'm just surveying the scene. I'm just going to say that doesn't seem to be the dominant shape of the world in which we live in. So maybe we just don't know what we want.
We're in a process of discovery, and I guess I'll just speak about my attitude towards relationships. So David and I have a whole lot of ups and downs, and we've had some pretty dramatic, ugly scenes because we have triggered each other's trauma a lot. We both have really substantial childhood trauma, and we've activated it, and then we've had to like go on this deep quest to like heal the trauma because we want our family to stay together. And we've both made giant progress, and we'll have like times when we're like really awesome and beautiful and vibing and getting along, and then we'll hit another layer of stuff, and then there's like turbulence again, and then we have to like go through and like heal this new layer. And sometimes I get really exasperated with it. I'm like, oh my lord, why did I ever sign up for this? Why did I ever think this was a good idea? That's on times when I'm more balanced and more centered. I'm like, wow, I'm so grateful that I signed up for this. I'm so grateful that I put myself into this alchemical pressure cooker, which is really what I think marriage is, and what it's meant to be a spiritual vocation, just like being a monk or a nun. Except it's like way, way harder than being a monk or a nun, because it's like you're interacting with one other human being as your primary, mirror of yourself and mirror of your relationship to the divine.
In a big balancing of forces, your internal forces, their internal forces, combined, external. Oh.
And your finances are together. If you have children, your DNA is together. Like, it is so much togetherness. And with me and David, we work together also, and it's just a whole lot, and it has made me have to heal things that nothing else in the world would have made me want to go there. Yeah. Nothing else except for like, I have to do this for the sake of my children.
Right, a million therapy sessions with a single therapist wouldn't have gotten out all this.
No, it wouldn't have gotten it. It just brings it all to the surface, and it's like, oh my god, it's right in my face, and I have to find a way to deal with this. And so obviously it's a roll of the dice. There's lots of people put themselves in the alchemical pressure cooker and don't find a way to deal with what comes up. But that's what I dream of, a world where there's a lot more support for people and a lot more understanding of marriage as a spiritual vocation. So, like, I guess what I'm saying is, like, I don't think of marriage as, like, this is supposed to make me happy or this person is supposed to complete me. I think of it as this is a deep alchemical alembic oven that I am putting myself in for the sake of bringing my soul closer to God, and some of it is going to hurt like hell, and some of it's going to feel really good, and it's going to be an adventure.
And I also thought of it maybe in a slightly different way of just choosing to extend your family. That idea of like family when you're born, like whoever your family was, you don't really get to choose them. You do get to choose your friends, but there's a difference. Like, friends in a general sense do tend to come and go. Like, it's rare. Like, I've even heard of communities, like intentional communities where, like, 40 friends move out onto a farm and they live there. But then you hear about the one guy who's still there 60 years later, and he's like, everyone else moved back to the city. They started getting into fights, they moved back to the city. But the idea of marriage is like, I'm choosing this person and this person's people to become a part of my family, right? Like, this idea of like we're in it sort of for the long haul. And what's super beautiful about that, and I had a good friend say the same thing, it's like when things are bad, you like lean on the ones that you love that much more. So you're choosing to like bring people in so that there's like, because let's face it, like getting old doesn't make life easier. It gets harder. And I don't want to say that you need to be with somebody, by the time you're like 70. It's like, whatever, you can always be a monk and join a community like that, or, join an old age home and get some great shuffleboard in. But you have that level where it's like, if times were to get hard, there would be this person who's kind of got your back. Or is
so what do I need
to
do to get you to settle down with a nice girl, Neil? I want to go to Neil's wedding. I was telling Layla this. I was like, why am I never going to... When do I get to go to Neil's wedding?
Oh, my God. Layla's probably just rolling eyes. Like, oh, jeez. But that's the thing. For me, I don't know. Like, it literally just depends on when the situation's right and the person comes in to my life and how it fits, and it's like all these other beautiful people that have come into my life.
Well, it
have
could
taught me a lot,
be
but
that,
it's like,
but there's also an element of decision. Like I'm saying, if you want it to happen, Neil, I do think you need to make a decision within yourself that's like, yeah, that's what I want. I want somebody to spend the rest of my life with. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for these trifling O's anymore.
Oh, well, I mean, I did that at the beginning of the year, and I still ended up in a situation with somebody who kind of felt like that, too, and then it sort of, like...
You made a decision that you wanted somebody to spend the rest of your life with.
I was looking for a long-term person, yeah.
A long-term person, somebody to spend the rest of your life with is not synonymous with long-term person.
All right, well, I haven't made the full decision
Well,
yet.
we're going to talk a little bit about this, Neil, because I feel like it's an inner decision, and obviously... I don't need to control your life and your fate, but I totally want to.
Well, I will say that there is a career goal that I'm trying to achieve,
Mm-hmm.
and I can definitely see myself fulfilling that with another person in mind. But it has become sort of like my baby. Like I'm working on some projects that I really enjoy putting a lot of passion and energy into. And so if someone comes into my life where it works and it's conducive, that's great. But once again, on like the comedy spectrum, it's like I can't have someone who's coming into my life right now, I can't support it, where they need a lot from me.
No,
like
of
on a
course.
codependent spectrum.
No, of course. That wouldn't be the right
The vibe.
vibe for you at all.
Right.
No, you would need somebody who is super awesome and super on your vibe and who maybe was a world traveler
Yes,
themselves.
like myself. Yes.
I was just saying, I feel like, yeah, we can talk more about this because I feel like there's a certain, like, inner posture and, like, an inner, like, willingness, basically, to, and, like, interest in going down this particular alchemical path and being like, yes, I'm wanting to choose this, vocation. But I just think you'd be so awesome at it, Neil. I think it would be a deep evolutionary ride for you.
I'm game.
Okay.
I'm game for it. Have you ever done that thing where they're like try and write out and like this ideal partner? They like you do some sort of like manifesting thing.
Like I did that before I got together with David. I wrote down 20 things I wanted in a partner.
David checked those boxes.
Except for being taller than 6'4". That was number one on the list. Over 6'4".
See, you don't exactly know what you want.
No, but I looked at the rest of the list and I was like, well,
19 out of 20, not bad.
Not bad. I'm going to take this. I was like, touche, universe. Touche.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because some things are just like ego preferences. They're
Right.
not like actual of the heart things. That was actually a deep thing that Nicole taught that is really true, which is that lots of people, especially women, have you ever heard of the delusion test? I don't know. There's this, like, basically if you ask any woman, like, what is she looking for in a man? She'll be like, well, he needs to be taller than 6 feet. He needs to make, 6 figures. He needs to have a, whatever its degree of education, at least a college education. And I think that pretty much you pass all those qualifications, Neil. Basically, if you're listening, Neil is a hot, eligible bachelor, everybody, and you should write into the show or sign up for Sleepover Mystery School so you can get away to possibly connect with Neil. But anyways, but there's only a very small fraction of men who, like, meet these, like, height and income requirements that, like, every woman is delusionally attached to. And it's just like, anyways, so for myself, I was like delusionally attached to that, and I just realized, okay, Carolyn, you're getting into your 30s. Is it more important to you to be with a man who's over 6 feet tall, or is it more important to you to start your family with an amazing, brilliant man who's into magic? Mm-hmm. What would you rather do? So I'm proud of myself about that, because I feel like I made a decision. And I get to enjoy all of the benefits of being married and having somebody, support me in so many ways. And
I think you made a great choice. I'm just going to go on and say David is an amazing parent and an amazing father. Like David made me feel like, oh man, like part of me really wants to be a dad right now.
Oh.
Yeah, I told him about it too. I also made the choice to get a vasectomy, but that, the timing of that was spiritually important.
Can't
to
those be undone?
They can.
Okay.
It's just a way more intensive procedure.
Well, it's yeah. David is a super inspiring father, and he is, he just fulfills my heart so deeply in that way and in so many other ways. And yeah, anyways, I just feel like there's crazy bitches out there who are not willing to understand that you need to make some adjustments. And anyways, there's also obviously crazy men out there who also
I
have
see a lot of
delusional
crazy men.
requirements.
Yeah.
And it's just everybody, you know what? Just get with the short, fat, ugly, amazing people of the world and be happy and married and not lonely and on apps. That's my message to the world.
Yeah, summarize. That's a good way of summarizing it. And meet them doing something that you both enjoy doing.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. There is some like wild number of single people out there. I can't remember.
No, it's crazy. It's higher than ever before, and it's like there's more. Yeah, I forget what the percentage is, but it's the highest amount of singleness, the highest amount of childlessness, the highest amount of depression, anxiety, loneliness, drug addiction, suicide, everything, because people don't know how to connect anymore, and they all have these like crazy, insane mental requirements for what they think connection is.
It's been sad. Like I watched a friend of mine and their baby daddy just go at it back and forth through text messages, and it's so sad because it's like we've given up on using our mouth to communicate, and we use like our fingers, and it just doesn't translate the same. Face to face is completely different. And then they would be arguing, and she'd be like, "Look at this! Look what he said." And I'd read it, but I didn't read it the same way she read it. And I was like, "It sounds like he's just being short with you. Maybe he's really busy." And then she'd be like, "No, he's a dick. He's always doing this." And I was like, "Well, why don't you ask him if he's really busy?" And she's like, "Ask him." He's like, "Yeah, I'm actually really busy. Sorry, I can't reply more in depth." She's like, "Okay, you're right." And it's like, yeah, but how often does that happen? So this idea of like getting face to face with people is so important. I was talking with my housemate. He lives upstairs now. I've got a new housemate, by the way. We have the same birthday, June 25th.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, very wild. Didn't know that. So we were talking, and I was talking about sort of the issues that I have with like using Instagram because of the algorithm and, trying to fight battles and wars on this digital social media platform. And he was like, yeah, I think we should just have like a party where we get together and people can just talk to each other. Like have like a social
a party?
Yeah.
Like what parties used to be before.
But even like an intentional party, like, oh, we're going to talk about this subject or whatever. And there are actually some of these salons popping up in Pittsburgh. People are doing this.
Oh,
like
sweet.
Someone is like hosting something. And I was
Invite me. I want to go to salons.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like, oh, wow, that's cool. That's a way where you not only meet new people, but you get away from these things that kind of separate us in general. And then maybe you do have some social awkwardness or whatever. If you hang out at like a salon a couple of times and you feel comfortable and a new person walks in, like maybe you're just being the best version of yourself when they're there, and it's like, hey, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the thing that hits it off. So, I don't know.
Well, good talk, Neil. Wait, are you going to tie it all up? Because we're winding it up.
Yeah, I was just thinking like break the norms that we've been living under for the past, since Tinder and all these things have been out.
Yeah.
Because they haven't benefited us.
No, they haven't. Bring back parties.
Yeah.
Lord. I feel like the pandemic really messed that up too. Well, and the whole Saturn-Pluto conjunction, we've been living in the consequences of that. Because astrology is real, Neil.
Yes, I agree. Astrology is real. I was, for the skeptics out there who probably aren't even listening to this podcast.
I guess you still talk to skeptics. I guess my entire life is spent talking to other hermeticists. So I'm just like, who wouldn't believe astrology? What?
I do get kicks talking to people who completely disagree with things that I agree with, because sometimes I like to come in and feel a little bit empowered by being better informed.
By being superior?
Yeah. A little guilty pleasure there.
Okay, everybody, we're going to wrap up this episode. Who knows? We still have more car rides, so we might do another episode. We might take a break, come back.
Bust out the snacks. Did I tell you I brought a ton of snacks?
Oh my God, I'm so into these snacks.
Prosciutto, cheese, let's go.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Like, share, Leave us a review. Thanks for listening to Sleepover Podcast. Bye-bye.